All right, welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we're going to be taking a look at AI and how it relates to uh, Studio Ghibli animation. You know, those like iconic films, Spirited Away, My Neighbor Totoro, Princess Mononoke. I mean, their style, their stories, they just kind of resonate all over the world, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really fascinating how globally recognized they are. I mean, the hand-drawn animation, the storytelling, the themes of nature, childhood.
Right. So for this deep dive, you sent over this article. It talks about how AI, specifically large language models like ChatGPT, can kind of start to like mimic Ghibli's style, especially in images and short videos.
Right, exactly. There's been some really interesting developments with that.
So I figured, let's break this down. Like, what makes Ghibli animation like that's so Ghibli? And then, like, what can AI do in that realm? And then, I guess, what does all this mean for, the future of animation?
Yeah, sounds good. Let's dive in.
Cool. Okay, so first off, like that Ghibli magic.
Yeah.
What are the core elements that really define that style?
Well, I think one of the things that's really central to it, the Ghibli's work, is their dedication to hand-drawn animation. I mean, it's traditional, right? And Miyazaki, he's actually famously said that, like, hand-drawn on paper, that's the fundamental core of animation.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
And they often use watercolors and acrylics, and I think that really comes across in their films. It gives them that warmth and expressiveness that's really hard to replicate.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. It's
Yeah.
it's in the details too, like all those incredible backgrounds they have, the forests and Princess Mononoke,
Hmm.
all those like charming little towns in Kiki's Delivery Service. It's like
Yeah.
they feel so real, so
Yeah.
handcrafted.
Totally.
Yeah.
Warm, organic. There's this real handcrafted feel to everything. And I think their use of color, too, it plays a huge role in creating that atmosphere. You know,
Yep.
those pastel and muted palettes. They're a huge part of creating that tranquil and wondrous atmosphere.
Hmm.
And color is so important to the way they tell stories. You know, they'll use brighter colors to evoke joy, and then they'll use more muted colors for scenes with sadness or reflection. So their use of color is a big part of their identity. You
Yeah.
can find Ghibli color palettes online.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, it's a thing. And then you think about the character. I mean, they're so iconic, right? Those big expressive eyes,
Yeah.
small noses. Sometimes you have the really voluminous hair.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how they balance those stylized anime features with human proportions.
Yeah.
And they convey so much emotion, but it's often through these very subtle shifts in facial expressions and body language.
Oh, for sure. Like less is more
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are all those specific animation techniques. I mean, their attention to detail, it's really meticulous, right?
Mm.
The way they make movement feel so lifelike,
Yeah.
that blend of fantasy and reality, it's almost like immersive realism, right?
Hmm.
And then there's that concept of ma, you know? It's
Yeah.
the Japanese concept of empty space, but in Ghibli films, it's those intentional pauses. Think of those quiet moments in My Neighbor Totoro. You know, those moments that just build this sense of atmosphere and anticipation.
Right, right.
And even when they use CGI, which isn't often, it's always in a way that supports the hand-drawn animation, you know?
Yeah.
It never replaces it.
I see. Okay, so that's like the Ghibli essence. But like, given all of that, how does AI like even begin to approach that level of artistry?
Well, I think with ChatGPT, for example, it's actually really interesting. It can be really useful in those early stages of storytelling. So generating those initial story ideas, developing the plot structure, you know, following the classic hero's journey or the three-act structure. And it can even be helpful as a brainstorming partner, right?
Okay, so it's like a starting point.
Right.
But I mean, what about actually crafting the characters?
Mm.
Can AI do that?
Yeah, it can help with that too. It can help create detailed descriptions, backstories, think about character motivations, even suggest internal conflicts to add some more depth to the character. And in terms of dialogue, ChatGPT can actually generate conversations. It can tailor them to specific emotions or points in the plot. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So it's getting pretty sophisticated.
But there's got to be limitations, right?
Yeah.
Trying to capture something as nuanced as Ghibli, I mean.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing with large language models is they're trained on existing patterns in data. So, you know, true originality, that's a challenge for them. And subtle human communication, like sarcasm, humor, irony, They don't always get that right.
Right, yeah. It's like it's just learned from what's out there already. So can it really grasp like those genuine emotions, that depth that makes Ghibli's stories so powerful? I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's a really crucial point. Like replicating that narrative complexity, those themes, like all the environmental messages they weave into their stories, and just that personal vision, that soul of Ghibli, that's a huge hurdle for AI.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so maybe fully imitating Ghibli is like way off. But I'm curious, how is AI being used in animation right now? Like in the broader industry?
Well, actually, if you look at the industry as a whole, AI is already playing a pretty big role. Like it's helping with those initial script drafts and dialogues, assisting in storyboarding by like generating visual sequences, and it's used in concept development for backgrounds and characters using tools like Midjourney and DALL-E 2. And then there are all the more technical aspects like character modeling, both in 2D and 3D, and rigging and texturing.
So this is kind of cool, but what if you combined like the AI for the narrative and the AI for the visuals? Like could you like have ChatGPT write a Ghibli-esque story and then like use AI to generate the image based on that?
That's the idea. That's the potential workflow. Yeah. You have ChatGPT for the story and script, and then use that to feed these AI image generators to actually create those visuals. And that could potentially lower the barrier for entry, for creators who want to get into animation.
Huh. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so if we're thinking about AI in animation, what would you say are like the main advantages and disadvantages?
Well, some of the big advantages are that it can like increase efficiency, speed up those timelines, potentially lower costs. And I think it can open up a lot of new avenues for like generating those initial ideas. But of course there are challenges like, potential for less creative control for the human artist. And then there's that thing about replicating those emotional nuances and that storytelling depth we see in Ghibli's work. That's still really hard.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so big picture now. What do you envision for the future? Like for AI and animation, what's going to happen?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think AI will definitely become more sophisticated. Maybe it can actually start to capture more of Ghibli's visual language, even those storytelling rhythms. I think we'll see a lot more of that. And who knows, maybe we'll see like fan-made Ghibli-esque animations. And I think overall, it has the potential to like transform the animation industry. Maybe it'll make things easier for independent creators, lead to new forms of animated experiences. It's exciting.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I guess to kind of wrap this up, it seems like AI shows some real promise in like imitating certain aspects of Ghibli. And it's definitely proving to be a useful tool in animation, but I mean, really capturing that unique essence of Ghibli, that's still a big challenge.
Exactly. And that leaves us with, this question as AI gets better at replicating artistic styles, like what will actually define art? And how do we